I thought I was just signing some harmless insurance papers for my mother-in-law, but it turned out my husband tricked me into giving up my share of our house. The moment I found out, she kicked me out and called it their family's home. But they messed with the wrong woman. What I did next turned their plan upside down, and I made sure they paid for every bit of it. I should have seen the red flags. But when you're in love and you trust your husband, you don't question everything he puts in front of you. Especially not when he smiles that warm, familiar smile and says, "It's just some routine insurance stuff for my mom, babe. Can you sign this real quick?" That was the day everything changed. It happened on a Tuesday evening right after dinner. I was washing the dishes, and he came into the kitchen holding a few papers. "My mom's switching her home insurance plan," he said, casually. "She needs a co-signer or something to help her qualify. You know how tight money's been for her lately." I dried my hands and glanced over the document. It looked official legal language signatures stamps, but I didn't fully understand it. I asked, "Shouldn't we have a lawyer look at this?" He chuckled and kissed my forehead. "Come on, it's just standard stuff. You trust me, right?" Those words echo in my mind now. You trust me, right? Of course I trusted him. We'd been married for 5 years. We bought this house together. Split everything 50-50. We had dreams of starting a family in that home. So I signed the paper without asking more questions. A week later, things started to feel off. His mother began acting more entitled than usual. She started coming over without notice, rearranging furniture, scolding me about how I kept her kitchen, her living room. One day, I came home from work to find her in my bedroom going through my closet. When I confronted her, she just smiled and said, "I'm just checking on my future space." Don't be so dramatic. Future space. I brought it up to my husband, but he brushed it off. You know how she is. Just let it go. But I couldn't let it go because it kept getting worse. One morning, I came downstairs and found her sitting in the living room with a real estate agent. They were discussing renovation ideas. When I asked what was going on, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You really think this is your house, sweetheart? You signed it over to me. This is our family's home. You were just keeping it warm." I felt the ground shift beneath me. I ran upstairs and started digging through our files. I found a copy of the document I signed. My heart sank. It wasn't an insurance form. It was a property transfer agreement. I had unknowingly signed my share of the house over to her. My name was gone from the deed. And the worst part, my husband had witnessed the signature. He knew. He was in on it the whole time. I confronted him that night. At first, he tried to gaslight me. "You must have misunderstood," he said. "I would never do that to you." But I held the papers in front of his face and screamed, "Don't lie to me!" That's when the truth came out. "She needs the house more than you," he said coldly. "You'll be fine. You have a job, she's getting older, and honestly, you never truly fit into our family anyway." I stood there, frozen, trying to understand how the man I loved, the man I shared my life with, could betray me like that. The woman who raised him had now taken my home, and he helped her do it. And then came the final blow. The very next day, I came home from work to find the locks changed and my suitcase sitting on the porch. There was a note taped to the door. It read, "You're no longer welcome here. This is our family's property now. Please don't cause trouble." That was it. No explanation. No apology. Nothing. I sat on the front steps and cried until it got dark. Then I called a friend who let me stay with her for a few days. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. My home, my marriage, my security gone. Just like that. But after the initial shock faded, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I hired a lawyer, a damn good one. He looked at the documents and immediately spotted multiple red flags. The signatures didn't match. The paperwork had inconsistencies. The notary who witnessed it, turns out she no longer worked at the firm listed and hadn't for over a year. It was starting to look like fraud. And fraud meant one thing. I had a fighting chance. As the investigation unfolded, I kept quiet. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't warn his mother. I let them think they'd won. Because I was about to take everything back and make sure they never forgot who they were messing with. For a few weeks, I felt like a ghost floating through my own life. I was technically homeless, crashing on my best friend's pull-out couch, and still waking up in the middle of the night, reaching for a man who had betrayed me in the most calculated way. I couldn't go back to the house, not yet. And honestly, I didn't want to not while his mother was living in my space, enjoying my furniture, walking around like she had earned any of it. No, I was going to do this the right way. Quietly, legally, and with full force. My lawyer, Sam, was amazing from the moment we met. He listened patiently while I poured out everything, the fake insurance papers, the emotional manipulation, the forged details. I handed him the documents, and he scanned them with a sharp eye. "You were scammed," he said plainly. "But this smells like a civil case with a criminal twist. And trust me, you have more power here than they think." We immediately got to work. Sam requested the original documents from the registry and began a formal investigation. He also contacted a forensic handwriting expert to compare my signature on the transfer deed with my actual writing. Within a week, we had confirmation my signature had been traced. They had literally used a light board or some digital method to replicate it. What's worse, my husband's mother had filed the transfer paperwork herself using a fake witness and a notary who had been out of state for over 6 months. The whole transaction was built on lies. With all of this in hand, Sam prepared a civil lawsuit to contest the transfer and demand full ownership restored to me. But we weren't stopping there. We were also filing charges of fraud, emotional distress, and intentional deception. The moment the papers were served, I wanted them to feel the consequences. But here's the part that still makes me smile. They had no idea it was coming. A few days later, I went back to the house not to fight, not to scream, but to observe. I parked a few houses down and watched as they carried groceries into my home. They were so comfortable, so smug. My husband even laughed with his mother on the porch, like they didn't have a care in the world. I snapped a few photos. Not because I needed them, but because I wanted to remember the last days they thought they'd won. The following Monday they were served. I wish I could have seen their faces. Apparently, my husband stormed into his office mid-morning looking pale and furious. He called me 10 times in a row, left voicemails accusing me of destroying the family and dragging his mother into a nightmare. The irony was too rich to ignore. I was destroying the family. No, sweetheart. You did that all by yourself. Meanwhile, his mother tried to play the victim. She called me crying, begging me to be reasonable and not ruin her retirement. She said I was being heartless after she stole my home and kicked me out like trash. I didn't return a single call. Everything went through Sam now. That was non-negotiable. The court process wasn't quick, but it was thorough. My husband and his mother showed up looking rattled and unprepared. They didn't expect me to fight. They thought I'd just disappear, too ashamed or too afraid to take action. But I showed up every day with evidence, a strong legal team, and the quiet fury of a woman who had been wronged and wasn't backing down. And here's the best part: my husband's mother admitted under oath that she had misrepresented the paperwork for the sake of the family. Her lawyer nearly choked when she said it. She tried to backpedal, but the damage was done. Her confession opened the door wide for the judge to rule in my favor. It took 4 long months, but in the end, the court voided the transfer. My share of the house was restored, and because of the fraud, I was granted full ownership. My husband had no legal claim anymore, and neither did his mother. They were ordered to vacate the property within 30 days, but it didn't stop there. The judge also awarded me damages for emotional distress, and their fake notary stunt triggered a criminal investigation. Fraud charges were now on the table. I wasn't just walking away with my house, I was walking away with justice. When I finally returned home, the place was a mess. Furniture was moved, walls were painted ugly colors, and it smelled like stale takeout. But it didn't matter. It was mine again. My space. My peace. I opened every window, blasted my favorite playlist, and cried happy tears as I cleaned every room they'd tainted. A few days later, I changed the locks. And then, a week after that, I did something symbolic. I planted a lemon tree in the backyard, right where his mother used to sit with her coffee and judge everything I did. That tree would grow year after year strong and rooted just like me. This house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was my fresh start, a reminder that even when you're betrayed by the ones closest to you, you can rise, rebuild, and come back stronger. And they lost everything because they underestimated me. I never thought taking my power back would feel so quiet. No fireworks, no screaming matches, just me in my clean home, sitting on the couch they tried to steal from me, sipping coffee in silence. And that silence, it was the most peaceful sound I'd ever heard. My lawyer called a few days after the judgment was finalized. "They've moved out," he said. Keys were returned. No resistance. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Good." He paused, then added, "And we just got confirmation. Your ex-mother-in-law is under formal investigation for document fraud. If they file charges, there could be a trial." My stomach twisted, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of how far we'd come. A few months ago, I was crying on my friend's couch, kicked out of my own home, unsure how I'd ever recover. Now they were the ones facing the consequences. And all I had to do was stand up and fight. But just because I'd won the legal battle didn't mean the emotional war was over. The day I walked back into my house, it felt different. The walls were still mine. The floors still held my footsteps. But the memories, the betrayal lingered like a sour scent. I needed to reclaim the space, not just legally, but spiritually. So I began to transform it, one room at a time. I ripped down the curtains that his mother had put up. I repainted the walls with bright, fresh colors. I donated every piece of furniture they'd touched and replaced it with things I loved. Bold patterns, soft textures, nothing chosen to please anyone but me. The kitchen, once a place of tension and control, became my sanctuary. I started cooking again, not out of obligation, but for joy. I tried new recipes, played music, while I baked invited friends over for wine, nights, and laughter. Laughter had been missing from this home for far too long, and slowly the house stopped feeling like the scene of a crime and started feeling like home again. But of course, people talk. Word spread quickly around our circle of friends at work, even among neighbors. Some reached out in support. Others kept their distance, unsure whose side to take. I didn't blame them. My ex-husband was charming in public, always the guy cracking jokes, helping carry groceries, smiling at kids. But charm only lasts so long when the truth surfaces. He tried reaching out first through texts, then through long, emotional emails. You didn't have to go that far. She's old. She didn't mean to hurt you. Can't we talk just once? I ignored every message, not out of spite, but because I owed him nothing. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you take for yourself. But then one evening I ran into him. It was at the grocery store of all places. I was grabbing some lemons, ironic. I know when I heard that familiar voice behind me. You look good. I turned and saw him standing there awkwardly, holding a shopping basket with a frozen pizza and some beer. He looked smaller somehow. Tired. Older. Thanks, I said flatly. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. I shrugged. I live around here. Remember. He nodded. Yeah. Right. There was a long pause. Then he added, I really messed up. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I wasn't about to offer comfort. He wasn't a child who'd made a mistake. He was a grown man who plotted with his mother to rob his wife of her home. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. When I didn't reply, he tried again. She's sick now. My mom's stress, maybe. I don't know. I just looked at him and said, that's between you and her. And then I walked away. No tears, no drama, just calm power. And it felt damn good. From that moment on, I stopped letting them rent space in my head. My life was no longer tied to their actions or their consequences. I had a home, a career, your friends call, who stood by me, and a future full of possibility. In fact, reclaiming my life opened doors I never expected. I started volunteering at a local women's center, helping women understand their legal rights in relationships and property ownership. You'd be shocked how many people, even educated professionals, sign things without understanding them fully. I shared my story anonymously at first, and then publicly. And each time, someone would come up to me and whisper, "Thank you." I thought I was the only one. I wasn't. None of us are. Financial manipulation, emotional betrayal, legal deceit. It happens more often than people think, especially in families where trust is assumed and boundaries get blurred. But here's the truth. I learned the hard way. Loving someone does not mean giving up your rights. Trust should never be used as a weapon. And no matter how deep the betrayal, you can come back from it. You can fight and win. A few months later, the lemon tree I planted in the backyard began to bloom. Small, bright flowers, promising fruit to come. Every morning, I'd sip my coffee by the window and smile at it. That tree was proof that something beautiful can grow from bitterness if you take care of it, if you protect it. And that's what I was doing now, protecting my peace, my heart, my home. One evening, I invited my friends over for a celebration. Nothing fancy, just some food, wine, music, and laughter. We toasted on the back patio right next to the lemon tree, and one of my friends looked around and said, "It feels so different here now, so light." I nodded. Because it is. This house no longer held ghosts. It held strength, resilience, and renewal. I no longer saw the door where I found my suitcase. I saw the door where I walked back in victorious. I no longer pictured her in the kitchen criticizing me. I pictured myself dancing barefoot while cooking dinner. And I no longer thought about him when I laid in bed at night. I thought about me, who I was before, and who I had become. Because the truth is, they didn't just lose the house, they lost me. And I found everything I needed. One morning, as I sipped coffee beside the lemon tree that now stood proudly in my backyard, I realized something. I didn't just win a case, I reclaimed my story. It was strange how quiet victory felt. No crowd cheering, no grand announcement. Just peace. A kind of peace I never knew I was missing. The kind that comes only when you've walked through hell and come out the other side stronger, clearer, and unshakable. But rebuilding my life wasn't just about paint colors and new furniture. It was about rebuilding me. When the legal dust had settled, I was left with a home that felt fresh, yes, but also with a silence that forced me to face everything I'd buried. The betrayal, the humiliation, the shame I hadn't wanted to admit I felt. And above all, the question I'd been avoiding for months. Why didn't I see it coming? The truth is, I had seen it. Little things. The way my husband flinched when I asked too many questions. how his mother always made backhanded comments about how lucky I was to live in their family home, even though I had put more than half the down payment. The constant insistence that family should stick together always right before they asked me to sign something or give something up. But I wanted to believe I was part of something sacred, that our marriage, with all its imperfections, was still built on mutual respect. I was wrong, and acknowledging that wasn't easy. So I did what I always do when I feel lost. I wrote. At first, it was just journal entries, raw, angry, tear-stained pages filled with every emotion I had shoved down for too long. But the more I wrote, the more clarity I gained. Slowly, I started shaping those thoughts into a personal essay, then 2, then 5, until one day I submitted them anonymously to a local women's publication. To my surprise, they published the first piece within a week. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in from women across the country, sharing their own stories of betrayal, legal blind spots, and emotional manipulation. Some were still stuck. Others were climbing out. A few had just made the decision to leave. One woman wrote, "Your words gave me the courage to finally call a lawyer." That message stayed with me. So I kept writing. Not just about my story, but about what I'd learned how to protect your assets in a relationship, how to recognize coercive behavior before it escalates, how silence and secrecy may often disguise abuse in a family setting. Eventually, my name went public. I stopped hiding. I stopped being ashamed. My story became my strength. Before long, I was invited to speak at local events, women's centers, and workshops. It was surreal standing in front of strangers, telling the story that had once shattered me. But every time I looked into those eyes wide, hopeful, afraid, I knew I was doing something that mattered. And through all of this, I found something I never expected: purpose. I had once been a woman scammed by the very people I called family, but now I was helping others avoid the same fate. My pain had created a ripple that went far beyond my little lemon tree and white picket fence. But healing isn't linear. There were still nights when memories sneaked in, like thieves quiet unwelcome. Sometimes I'd wake up thinking I heard his voice or her laugh echoing in the hallway. Sometimes I'd catch myself instinctively looking for his car when I pulled into the driveway. Trauma, I learned, doesn't disappear. It just becomes quieter over time, less of a roar, more of a whisper you learn to live with. And slowly, I started to open myself up again. Not to him, never to him, but to me, to the version of myself that had been waiting patiently beneath all the fear and survival mode. I took dance classes, something I'd wanted to do for years, but never had time for. I went on solo hikes, something he always said was too dangerous. I even traveled alone for the first time, just a weekend trip to Oregon, but it was enough to make me feel free. And then one evening at a book event, I met someone, not in the romantic head-over-heels movie-style way, just a gentle, easy conversation that felt safe. He was kind. A therapist who worked with trauma survivors. He had a calming energy, One that didn't push or pull, just invited. We exchanged numbers. No pressure, no rush. Just two people who had both seen darkness and still chose light. We went for coffee, then hikes, then dinners. And through it all, I kept waiting for a red flag, a gut twist, a lie. But none came. Because when you've been through hell, you learn how to spot the smoke before it turns to fire. I'm not saying he's my happy ending. I don't think I even believe in endings anymore. But he's part of my next chapter. And for now, that's enough. As for my ex-husband and his mother, last I heard she had moved in with her sister across the state. The fraud investigation didn't lead to jail time, but she was fined heavily, and her reputation in her community took a major hit. As for him, I've heard whispers of job struggles, money problems, and a trail of burned bridges. I don't gloat. I don't wish them harm. I simply don't think about them, because I'm too busy thinking about me, my growth, my joy, and my future. Recently, I hosted a small dinner at my house. Just a few friends, some wine laughter spilling out through the open windows. Someone asked if I'd ever sell the place, now that it was finally all mine. I looked around at the warm lights, the artwork I'd chosen, the lemon tree swaying in the backyard, and smiled. No, I said. This house taught me who I am. I'll never let it go. Because this isn't just a home. It's a victory. It's a rebirth. It's the place where I stopped being silent, stopped being scared, and finally became the woman I was always meant to be. And that woman, she doesn't just survive. She thrives. Looking back now, it's almost strange how something so painful became the doorway to everything I never thought I deserved. Before all this, before the lies, the stolen house, the betrayal I thought strength meant keeping quiet, being the peacemaker, ignoring red flags, putting others first, no matter how much it cost me. I thought that was what good wives did, good daughters-in-law, good women. But now, I know better. True strength isn't staying silent. It's speaking up, even when your voice shakes. It's standing in court with your knees buckling, but your truth held high. It's walking back into a house where you were once kicked out and planting new roots anyway. These days, my life is simple. And I love that. I wake up in a space that feels like mine. I work with women who remind me daily that we are never alone in our battles. I write because I want my story to be someone else's flashlight when they're lost in the dark. And sometimes I sit under the lemon tree in my yard and just breathe. Because peace, I've learned, is not something you find. It's something you protect. There are still hard days, triggers, doubts, but they pass more quickly now. I trust myself in a way I never did before. I know what questions to ask. I know how to listen to that quiet voice inside that whispers, something isn't right. And if I could speak directly to the woman I was back then, the one who signed a document without reading it, because she trusted too deeply, I wouldn't yell at her. I wouldn't scold her. I'd take her hand, look her in the eye, and say, "You're going to be okay. Not just okay, you're going to be powerful. And one day, you'll thank yourself for walking away, even when it broke your heart. Because that's what this journey has been, a homecoming. Not just to the house, but to myself. I don't miss my ex-husband. Not even a little. I don't miss the way I was constantly questioning my worth, the way I tiptoed around his mother's judgment, the way my opinions were always up for negotiation. I miss none of that. What I do cherish are the lessons. How I learned to read every contract, to never confuse love with loyalty, to set boundaries so firm they don't even need to be spoken. They're felt. And more than anything, I learned this: you don't owe anyone your silence. If someone asks you to shrink so they can feel bigger, walk away. If someone has, without asking, fight to take it back. If someone tries to write your story for you, snatch the pen out of their hand. Because your story, it matters. And if mine helped even one person out there avoid the trap I fell into, then maybe it was all worth it. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been made to feel like your voice doesn't matter, let me be the one to tell you it does. Your instincts matter. Your rights matter. You matter. And if no one else has said it today, let me say it now. You're not weak for being fooled. You're not stupid for trusting the wrong people. And you're not alone in what you're going through. There is a way forward, a way to reclaim your peace, your space, your voice. One step at a time. I got my house back. I got my power back. And most importantly, I got myself back. And so can you. If you found strength, hope, or healing in this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Our channel family story. My husband is here to tell the stories no one talks about, stories of betrayal, resilience, and rising from the ashes. Because your story matters. And we're here to remind you, you're not alone. Subscribe now for more real-life stories that inspire, empower, and heal. Thank you for watching, and thank you for believing in second chances. See you in the next one.